Hello, lovelies. I'm back. This is Kimberly Purpose, and welcome to my channel. Hello, family. Today, I'm doing another video about the opioid and crack addiction. I found this really nice, interesting blog here, and it has some really good, interesting information. I want to talk about the racial double standard when it comes to opioids and crack addiction. I work as a therapist in the field of mental health, and so I do work with people who suffer from addiction. And I even written a novel about the crack addiction during the 1980s and 90s. Y'all might want to check it out. It's called Age of Innocence. It's on Amazon. But I just wanted to talk about the differences and how it is definitely a double standard between the two. I did a video a while back, about a year ago, I believe, about the double standard of how, just an overview of the differences in how these two drugs addictions have been handled by police, by the criminal justice system, in the health field. There's a major difference in how it's treated in the 1980s and 90s with crack addiction. And of course, today with the opioid addiction, there's definitely a double standard, and it has a lot to do with I hate to say it, with race. If the difference was crack addiction affected the Aboriginal Americans, the AKA African Americans, and the opioids is affecting Caucasians. And so that's why there is a big difference between the two types of drugs and how the treatments that's available to the addicts who are addicted to these various types of drugs. But now there has been a decrease in crack addiction uh, within the United States, because uh, less and less African Americans are addicted to crack, and the epidemic has finally went away because they pretty much locked up the people that were addicted to the drugs. But with opioids, they handling it every too delicately, as far as I'm concerned, and there's no punishment. So if there's no punishment, the people who are addicted to the drugs do not have an incentive to want to get off. But let's read this particular blog article and see what it says. It says, opioids versus addiction, a racial double standard. It has been years in the making, but finally lawmakers and government agencies are jumping to the slow progress of opioid epidemics, a crisis that kills more than 28,000 persons in the U.S. each year and was overtaking car crashes as the leading cause of accidental deaths. It all started with the mass marketing and prescribing of painkillers of drugs like oxycontin. So, yeah. And the drug with the car crashes, that is a big problem. It has really gone up. And if I'm not mistaken, it has surpassed the car crashes of drunk drivers. And now it's the problem with drug addicts causing these crashes instead. And it is really starting to be more of a bigger problem, especially you see a lot of heroin addicts shooting up drugs and still driving and being high, and that's when they crash into cars, other tractor trailers, or going the wrong way, or it's just a hot mess. And wow, I've been hearing about those types of news going on in the news these days. But let's continue. It says, but at the same time, the power that showed the little concern of sufferers when crack cocaine was affecting persons in similar manners in the 1980s and the 1990s, while we cradle those who unwillingly got addicted to prescription medicines, uh, Our solution for crack addicts mostly considered of locking them up for as long as possible. Pretty much that's all they did. They criminalized the drug addicts. And with crack, the drugs were flooded into the neighborhoods, just like with the guns and the weapons and everything. With the crack addict, the government, was been proven, the CIA purposely put the drugs into the African American community and flooded it with this, and that's what caused the epidemic in the first place. And it took years for for the African American community to heal itself. And I'd say at least 20 years, in the 80s and 90s, we had problems with crack babies and everything being born. So, and with the opioids is totally different. It's prescribed, and a person has to actually go out and want to get the drug and actually start getting the drug. And it's like with crack, the African Americans really didn't have a choice. Is like it was just thrown into the community purposely by the CIA and probably cricket cops, getting tongue tied. Cricket cops came in with the drugs too, so it was just a hot mess. And they brought it in, and it was against the African American Aborigines' will. Whereas with the opioids, it's a choice. Nobody is making these, Caucasians take the drugs. It's like they're willingly or going out there actually looking for the drug. So, yeah, it's just a hot mess right now. But let's go on and continue. It says, truthfully, I believe we started to do the right thing by heroin and opiate addicts, but we are really lifting the stigma of addiction. Or is it just a race issue? It pretty much is a race issue, because when when African Americans, some of the African Americans were strung out on crack during the 1980s and the 1990s, they were criminalized. It wasn't seen as a health issue. Now that the whole face of drug addicts has changed, and now it's gray Caucasoids, now they say, oh, it's a health issue. It's like they babying them. Is the whole concept of saying that it's a health issue, a public health issue, and trying to open up clinics to assist them and have everything readily available for them instead of sending them to prison like they did the crack addicts. It's blatant racism. It's no ands if or buts about it. It is racism. They don't want to send them to prison. And since they don't want to send them to prison, they don't want them to go to court. They want them to constantly get over like a fat rat as usual. And it just let them walk free without any kind of punishment. So it's really, really sad. And it's really disgusting, actually, because the problem is they're not looking at the issue at hand and doing anything about it. There's no punishment for abusing drugs and selling drugs. It's like the sellers are gray Caucasoids, the users are gray Caucasoids. And since it's the same group of people that they don't want to imprison, they doing the same exact thing as in the crack epidemic, whereas it was African American, they criminalized and sent them to prison, and the drug addicts never did get treatment. And instead, they was forced to do prison time for 20 years, really harsh sentences. And they letting these gray Caucasoids walk freely and no punishment, ever go to jail. They get plenty of treatment. And so, and what I'm saying is it's going to backfire on them, because there's no punishment. If there's no punishment, no incentive to stop using the drug, and the government and the law is enabling them, just handing it to them and letting them walk freely and no punishment, of course they're not going to stop. It's going to continue because they don't have no incentive to stop. They pretty much continue the drug addiction and to get worse and worse. And more people get on the drugs who are great caucasoids because there's no punishment. That's what I see happening. But let's continue. It says, are we to become more sympathetic or just show our true feelings as a society about which lives matter? Yeah, exactly. Take for instance the Project Advocates of Opioids Recovery, a joint political effort drawn by the Newt Gingrich and Patrick Kennedy regarding the plight of opioid addiction. Gingrich sounds pretty darn sympathetic. Here's his quote. There's this myth that everybody could just will themselves off of it. Imagine that, he said, we know we shouldn't give people insulin. They ought to will themselves to correct the diet and exercise, and give insulin makes them weaker. Giving the insulin makes them weaker. He tried to compare their drug addiction to insulin. Wow. Insulin, you have to have it. But the painkillers, you don't have to. You can live without it and you won't die, Well, I'm talking about if you don't get addicted to it. But I guess if you're on it, you have to have a doctor to help you to get off of it. But I guess he's trying to compare the two. I guess he's trying to gain sympathy for the drug addict. But let's continue. And he's not really wrong. It's vastly different perspective than what we've seen from the lawmakers and law enforcers in the past. But I also accept that the Time articles put forth by Gingrich and Kennedy and Van Jones reads, studies show that opioid addiction is a chronic brain disease to which some people are genetically predisposed. They didn't say that with the crack addicts. They never said that. And plus, opioids is not the only drug that these Caucasians are abusing. They're abusing 4. It's opioids, fentanyl, heroin, and meth. And heroin and meth are found on the streets. Okay? And so, but they still don't want to criminalize them. They want to say, oh, they need all the help they can get. And some of these drugs, they're using and mixing together. And that's why a lot of them are dying off and killing themselves. They're suffering from what they call despair, death of despair or something like that. But let's continue. It says, I guess that's not really been the case with great crack addicts. In fact, Gingrich once called these addicts to exert more self-control. Compare that to his statement above. Exactly. You said that to the crack addicts, but you're going to baby these folks? And they talking about opioids. Opioids is not the only drug. They try to make it as an umbrella, but these folks are on some street drugs too. Meth is a street drug. And so is heroin. People are getting these things off the street. So it's the same thing. And you're not criminalizing these people either. The meth heads, you're not. And you're not criminalizing the heroin addicts either. You just don't see it. It's a big difference, and it's a big double standard. It's all the way down to how the cops, the judicial system, everything is just, even the health people, the paramedics, when they come and get them, it's a major difference, and it's really disgusting, actually. And I think there's no answer buts about it. I see it as a root of their demise. There's no punishment for your misbehavior then, of abusing drugs. Because to me, it's also a choice, and it's not making the addict to take more accountability for their actions. It's always everybody else's fault but the addict. And the addict made the choice to continue abusing the drug. So, it's no punishment. With crack, they looked at the addict and said, oh, you decide to use crack, you go to jail. There's no ands or buts about it. You're criminalized. But with these people, no matter what the drug is, besides the opioids, the fentanyl, all of them, heroin and meth, they're not criminalized. They go, oh, poor thing. But, they even talking about opening up clinics for these people to have it administered by a professional, which is ridiculous to me. All they're doing is enabling these people and not solving the root of the problem. There has to be a point in the time where you got to put accountability on the addict and have them make a decision, and whether you want to correct your life or you crumble. You didn't give the crack addicts that opportunity. They didn't even offer treatment for these people. And personally, the crack addicts were more of a victim than these opioids, because with the crack addicts, the government actually put it in the neighborhood. Nobody put it in the Great Caucasoids neighborhood. Nobody flooded their neighborhoods. Now, maybe they're doctors, but the doctors thought they were helping them by giving them drugs for pain. But with African Americans, they didn't have treatment plans. They didn't give us these types of drugs because they felt like we should suffer, and we don't have pain. But in a way, their racist rhetoric that they had towards the African Americans has turned and backfired on them. Now it's on them to the point where they're addicted to a drug to the very drug that's supposed to relieve pain. And now they don't have no control over it, spiraling out of control because they're not facing it head on and holding some of these addicts more accountable for their actions, and letting them fall a little bit. Sometimes you have to hit rock bottom to make a difference. And if you don't hit rock bottom to make a difference, to get up and say, hey, I got to do something, of course it's going to continue, and I don't see this going anywhere, unless people be more proactive, and nobody's being proactive. Everybody is pointing a finger at everybody else except for the addict, and putting more pressure on them to do something about their addiction. And it says here, President Hillary was devised a $10 million plan to fight opioid addiction and prevent overdose. This plan's components largely geared towards prevention, treatment, and recovery. Conversely, in 1989, drug czar William Bennett announced a $7.9 billion plan to combat the current drug epidemic, but 70% of that would be spent on hiring more law enforcement personnel. See that over here, most of the money was spent in the 80s for law enforcement, police officers, so they could throw everybody in prison. But of course, here they opening up all these clinics for the opioids in order to baby these folks, and it's ridiculous. When are you going to make the drug addicts be accountable for, using these drugs? There's no punishment. You get over like a fat rat, you don't have no incentive to want to stop. There's no incentive. You'll just keep on doing it. And it's costing the government tax dollars and more money. But anyway, it says here, because that's what America needs, the answer to prison overpopulation is to build more prison, right? Yeah, see what I'm talking about? They want to build all these prisons, but they want to put Aborigines in there. Well, and their people are the ones who are committing most of the crimes. They should be the ones to fill these up. And since these great wealthy elites want all these prisons, then they got their own people they could put in there. That's only fair, But they don't see that way. They want to come up with silly ways to put more people of color in prison instead of their own. Even when their own are the main criminals. They've always been that way. They committing more of the crimes. And these doctors got money, so they're not going to go to jail for writing these prescriptions. They let them get off as a fat rat. That's why, it's no incentive for them to stop. And when you don't have no incentive, no punishment, of course, you're going to continue to do more, and it's going to get worse. And all of this is now backfiring. Years of racist tactic is finally imploding and backfiring in the face. It's going to get worse. It's going to implode even more on these great Caucasians because they're not doing anything about it. They're being very passive about it. They want to punish us, but but the more they mess with us, Yahweh has a way of putting it back on and multiply it. And until they realize their mistake, it's going to continue. It's going to get worse. The plague's going to get worse, and there's more to come. But it says here the bill passed in 1994 added more fuel to the fire. Sentences for crack possessions and dealing with increase in years enhanced the law enforcement presence loomed over aggressively police black communities. Pretty much. That's exactly what they did. And it's too many great Caucasians as police officers. They come in there and that's like the slave patrol. Pretty much to send people to jail for stupid stuff. I know back then it was a crack epidemic. So they had crack that they put in there on purpose. And now with the crime going down, they trying to come up with stupid stuff. Like I'm hearing about trying to lock people up for marijuana when in other states, marijuana is legal. But yet they want to throw people in prison for 20 years for something that's illegal in certain states, which is crazy to me. And then now they're trying to use jaywalkers as an excuse to harass people and then plant drugs and stuff. It's just ridiculous, you know? You can have a great caucus or walk across the street and jaywalk and they let them walk freely. But then when men are black, Aborigine walk across the street, you want to go over there and harass them and then plant drugs on them so you can throw them in jail or just create and escalate things more. And so you can harass them. I just saw a video of a man being attacked for jaywalking. He was tired. He was getting off from work and he was minding his own business. And gray cops come over there harassing him. That's what I'm saying. There's too many gray cops in our neighborhoods. If they cannot handle or feel safe dealing with our people, they don't need to be in our neighborhoods. They don't need to be policing anyone but their own selves. And I feel like gray Caucasians need to go in their own neighborhood and police their own neighborhood since they think they can't, they'll handle our people with respect and dignity and without injuring them, especially if they are don't have a weapon. So like I said, it's getting ridiculous. And a lot of this needs to change, you know. But anyway, it says in 1995, the Defense Department began donating military equipment to the police departments. Donation armored carrier rocket launcher. Really? This is ridiculous. And laser scopes and more. In 1997, they even given law enforcement over $1 million worth of equipment. Wow. They need to be taking these into the Great Caucasus neighborhood. They the ones with all the weapons and doing all the gun shootings in the schools. That's what I'm saying. You're going to use that where, you're looking at the wrong people. And the ones who commit them, it's just they want to keep people in jail. They want to keep slavery alive. But you got plenty of great Caucasus walking up in this throughout the United States committing plenty of crimes. You can put yourself in there. As far as I'm concerned, those are the people that need to be behind bars. You got plenty of criminals to lock up yourself. Since you want criminals and you want free labor, you could enslave yourself. And that time is coming. The tide is turning. Because karma has a way of getting you for not doing what's right. So our answer to drug addiction is this. Intimidate, brutalize, and arrest. Compare that to now and have begun to give our addicts harm, reducing and abuse, deterring drugs. I can't even imagine what happened for crack addicts. Exactly. Crack addicts had it worse. And that was by design. And it says here, let's not forget media swirls around crack babies. That was a sensational topic that made people very angry at mothers. Today, opioid mothers just seem much more forgivable. Yeah, they're going, oh, poor thing. No, the lady was abusing drugs. Why you're not criminalizing her? But you say, when it was crack epidemic, you say, oh, what terrible mothers did. Aren't these great Caucasus terrible moms for using drugs too? Okay? That's what I'm saying. It's like they want to baby them. And the fact is, they're doing the same thing. And it's definitely a double standard. And since they're not doing anything to be tougher on these folks like they were with us, it's going to implode on them because it's going to increase. Because, like I said again, it's no punishment. No incentive to do better because everything is handed to you freely. And it's going to backfire. It's going to implode. But let's continue. All this did nothing but help crack infested communities. It only served to create and exacerbate stereotypes and enhance image of scary black males, which is still pervasive to this day and put a lot of people in jails. Yeah, because of media. The media created this negative image. The mainstream media. That's why they want to force people to watch this um, toxic method of propaganda, you know, through the media. And that's why it's a good thing that we have alternative media to look at as opposed to mainstream media, because mainstream media is pretty much used to as a mind control or to brainwash people to believe lies and myths against certain groups of people, when actually the real criminals are themselves, the great caucasoids, doing all these evil deeds. And you paint them as being heroes when actuality they ain't. A lot of them, most of them, many of them are not. And then paint this negative image of our black males as committing crimes. You'll think that we are a majority of people committing crimes when actuality is actually the other way around. And so that's why, that's where that comes from. These images, it comes from the media. And who owns the media? We all know who owns the media. The Caucasoids, the Caucasians. And it says here, in the peak of the war of crack addiction, there was a lot of discussion and media coverage. However, it just didn't elicit much empathy. It was almost as if the gritty reality of it made it just as hard to stomach. In 1986, a Gallup poll asked, which one of the following do you think is the most serious problem of society today? Marijuana, alcohol abuse, heroin, crack, other forms of cocaine, or other drugs. 42% said crack, and other forms of cocaine beat alcohol abuse by 8%. Even though there were far more alcoholics and alcohol abuse than crack addicts. Heroin wasn't even on the radar. See? And then if you had the media constantly exaggerating the amount of black people or Aborigine, I mean to say not black, bronze, copper colored people committing all the crimes, of course you're going to think that that's harsher. And then there's a lot of people, and of course they put cocaine in the back burner, even though there were a lot of great Caucasoids that were abusing cocaine. And probably at the same rate, and maybe even more, probably just as much, but they don't cover it. And then alcohol abuse is the main thing, but they don't cover that at all. Even though more people was during that time period was dying from car crashes with alcoholics more so than cracks, probably. Don't take my word for it. I'm just assuming, so don't take my word. I got to research that to get the exact numbers. But according to this article, there were more alcoholics than crack addicts. But with the way they portray the media, you would think it's the other way around, because they put so much emphasis on crack because they want to paint this narrative that American Aborigines are criminals, when actuality is actually themselves great Caucasoids. The FBI report pretty much shows that. And it says the race, socioeconomic status of substance abuse itself. It says, is race the socioeconomic status or the substance itself? I say it's a combination of all of that. Let's see what this says. The other issue is that crack addicts are viewed differently than cocaine addicts. Crack is a lot cheaper, hence the reason why you see more people doing it who live in poverty. Powder cocaine is more or less luxury and more white drug, if you will. And so it's pretty great Caucasoids, great Caucasians. They the ones that abuse the cocaine. So of course they're gonna give them less charges and, give them, let them get over like a fat rat and not have to do anything. Don't imprison them. But then they're gonna have heftier charges for crack, because those are the people who are poor and people of color usually, who that's the type of drug they use. According to the Drug Enforcement Agency, by the late 1970s, there was a massive importation of cocaine powder into the U.S., which caused the price of drugs to drop as much as 80%. In response, dealers started converting their products to crack, a rock-like substance that could be smoked. These rocks would be broken and sold in smaller quantities, and more people at a larger profit. Basically, it was cheap, easy to produce, and very profitable for drug dealers. And it was thrown in throughout the African American community by design. And it says here, in addition to the stigma of crack addiction occurs versus powder cocaine, there has traditionally been a huge sentencing disparity between the two. Again, a reflection of our attitude towards blacks or persons of lower economic status. Wow. See? Let's continue. See, this explains the disparity between the two groups, and how, socioeconomic status has a different, is weighed heavily on how each, everybody was treated differently. It says, fortunately, the Fair Sentencing Act passed in 2010 was supposed to take care of that, but I'm not sure if it played out. There were still some huge problems not addressed by the bill, such as reduced sentencing for people persecuted under the law, which occurred majority of time. Wow. See? Of course, they don't want that because they want to keep slavery alive and keep Aborigines in prison because they want them to continue to make products for free and use cheap labor and not pay people. See, that's all that is. But they got plenty of great caucasoids now. They can stick them in there and let them be a slave. But they don't want that to happen. But, it's getting ridiculous. But then they want to keep the racism is obviously showing because you want to put blacks and Aborigines in jail for stuff that are not as serious as the drug addiction that and the things that the Great Caucasoids are doing, and let them get off. But anyway, it says so there where there's is stigma originating is black related, income related, and sometimes due with the seediness of the substance itself. And it says in big, the white rural communities, and truthfully, we don't really show much sympathy of meth addictions either. It says we don't really show much sympathy for meth addicts either. Compare that to the regular amphetamines often taken by presumably well-educated college students when they are cramming for finals. Wow. But let's continue. It says in commentary, of note, a crack use to now more prevalent among whites than blacks. Of note, crack use is now more prevalent among whites than blacks, although it is still largely viewed as a black drug. See? So it went down in the black community, but they still want to keep this narrative going with propaganda. And I guess because it was in the past, it was mostly Aborigines, but now it's gone down in the African American community. It says, while I suspect the race has a lot to do with it, I admit that in the past as society, we had little sympathy for addicts in any shape or form. Maybe in such outpouring of compassion and understanding means our views about addiction are finally evolving. It's not evolving. It is definitely not evolving. I guess this is what the art is not evolving. The only reason why it's evolving is because you do not want to put Great Caucasoids in prison. That's all that is. It's not evolving at all. Okay. And if anything, if you're going to let these Great Caucasoids walk freely with all these illegal drugs that they're using and abusing, then you need to let the crack addicts out of prison who's been in there for all that time. And you still got them in jail. And you need to provide, they need to provide free treatment for these people too. That's only fair. And that's why this plague continued to fester among them, because you can't keep on doing karma and think it's okay and you can get away with it. It's going to implode on you. You put all our people in prison and criminalize them without treatment and everything. And you give them all these steep penalties for being in prison when it was All these drugs was brought into our community by the government and by design. So, you're not putting your drug addicts in prison. You want to keep them out, but yeah, you want to keep out, but you want to keep the ones that are in prison from the past, who had marijuana charges. They still in prison. In some states it's legal, and if it's legal in certain states, then why are these people still in prison? That's a question I want to ask. So no, I don't think it's evolving. It's just y'all trying to keep your great caucasoids out of prison. Because when it's Aborigines, you want to make sure you give them the healthiest sentence. And if it's any Aborigines doing drugs, American, Aborigines using drugs, you're going to make sure they get the healthiest, that lengthiest sentence possible. So no, it has not evolved as far as I'm concerned. It may have helped with better treatment, but as far as the judicial system and how people is handled equally among the races, it has not evolved. Is still blatant racism. Treatment, in other words, you want treatments to only be for great caucasoids, but none available to the Aborigines, the people of color. But let's continue. It says, I just hope we continue to choose to consider all persons, regardless of color, social status, substance of choice, and equally deserving compassion for outreach. And it's not happening. There's no compassion. The way great caucasoids treat the drug addicts who are gray, he treats them delicately and with compassion. But the minute they see a person of color, they want to, especially a person who's a golden bronze color, they want to beat them down. They want to mistreat them. They want to gun them down. No kind of compassion whatsoever. Okay, so no, it's not fair. It's definitely not equal, and we have a long ways to go as far as I'm concerned. Long ways to go, and really, this whole gray supremacy needs to be torn down and destroyed, and we just need to start anew because the system is not fair at all. The whole entire system, is not equal. But anyway, this article was written, I believe, by Natalie Sorrell, and she has a degree in psychology. But I'm gonna leave a link to this article. I thought it was very interesting. She raised some really good points, and it's true. There's no equality as far as I'm concerned, and the way they're handling this is going to backfire and implode on themselves because there's no, like I said, there's no punishment, there's no incentive to stop the addiction. If you're going to get a little slap on the hand and everybody baby you and keep on giving you the drug for free and just showing, and not trying to, it's going to continue. You don't have no reason to stop. Why should you? You're not going to lose nothing. You don't lose your house. You don't lose your job. You don't lose your career. You don't lose your family. Everything just hands back to you. You don't go to jail. You don't have to pay for anything, but just get free drugs and continue. I don't see it's going to grow in faster because that's more of an incentive for more people to use drugs because, everybody, and then if you overdose, they try to keep you alive. And it's like there's no incentive to think about stopping. And I personally think the whole system is enabling them and helping them to stay on it longer. But that's my opinion. I would love to see what you all think about this drug addiction, and the double standards between opioid addiction and crack. Please like this video and thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. I am on blackjunctiontv.com. I have a Facebook page and a Facebook community. Y'all feel free to welcome to join. And till next time, peace, family, and be blessed. Bye-bye.